pay for it. In a world where information on the web is both plentiful and free. Jewish communities all over the world are also undergoing profound changes. Ties to organizational Judaism continue to fray. Congregations are working hard to generate Jewish interest, but are struggling to create commitment and a guaranteed membership. With over 25 years in my previous job as a journalist, I was very much aware of these challenges and changes. But it wasn't until I became the director of the Israeli government press office that I realized just how much the decline of the newspapers and the connection between the Jews in the diaspora and their communities go hand in hand. The Jews have always been called the people of the book, and as the younger generation finds new ways of educating itself and consuming information, it is the role of local media outlets to help preserve that sense of community. We asked the participants of this conference, is Israel an Assad or a burden? And some people might say, pain in the ass. Although, of most of you, the answer is obvious. It became more complicated when you were asked to think about your leaders and your potential leaders. In Israel, for some reason, the Jewish diaspora gets very little attention in the press, and most of that coverage is tied in one way or another, the anti-Semitism and hate crimes. The mainstream media in Israel doesn't even hire special diaspora affairs reporters, which is a pity. I remember when I started working as an Israeli television in 1990, I was hired as a special correspondent for diaspora affairs and Jewish work, and even in that time, it was something like 4 to 6 stories a year, usually Hanukkah parties, Purim festival, and the annual parade to celebrate Israel Independence Days in New York and some other places in the world. Today, Jewish celebration around the world or other meaningful events in the diaspora are rarely mentioned. These were some of the reasons that guided us to formulating the concept for this initiative. With a lot of hard work, we were able to gather here over 120 senior representatives of Jewish media outlets from more than 30 countries. You know, in the Pirkei Avot, in ethics of father, we used to say, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Lezo, which means that all the Jews are responsible one for another. I'm sure that all of you will agree with me that all journalists, either Jews or not Jews, are responsible, you know, to be freedom of speech, freedom of journalism, and get it first, but first get it right. So I think that at the end of the day, we are all one family, all one nation, and I hope that you will find the next couple of days insightful, that learning from colleagues and sharing your own challenges will inspire you how to better deal with them, and maybe even adopt new strategies. Our first achievement at this conference is its very existence, and I'm hoping that this gathering will turn into, at very least, a biannual tradition, every 2 years. This is the aim, this is the goal. I wish to thank all the GPO's partners that help us in putting this conference together: the Foreign Ministry, the Jerusalem and Diaspora Affairs Ministry, the Tourism Ministry, the JNF, the Jewish Agency for Israel, and all the others. Mechiot Kapayim. Thank you, and have a productive conference. Toda Rabba. And now we will do the rehearsal in order to get our president. So please close your mobile and be ready to have him. And before we start, where is David? David, where are you? Okay, so David Horowitz, the editor of the Times of Israel, he will be the journalist who will conduct the press conference. And okay, ladies and gentlemen, please stand up for the President of Israel, Mr. Shimon Peres. David Horowitz, as I said, the editor of Time of Israel, the microphone is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitzan. Welcome, Mr. President. Welcome, everybody. I have to say, very briefly, I think it's a lovely idea that we have built a community of Jewish journalists and brought them to Israel. Wonderful. Kol hakavod to Nitzan and whoever this idea was. We have some time with the President. What I think would be useful would be to try and get to as many questions as we can. And therefore, if you get to ask a question, try for a question rather than a speech. And I'm going to take a moderator's privilege and ask you the first question, Mr. President, which is about Mahmoud Abbas, who is helping Israel now in the hunt for our 3 kidnapped Israeli teenagers, but who also heads a government backed by Hamas. So is he a partner for Israel or not?
I think he's the best partner.
Excuse me.
What happened? I think he's the best partner that Israel ever had and has now. I know him for 20 years. On many occasions, the two of us signed close agreement in Washington. I think he's a man of his words. I think he's a man of courage. What he did right now, before a totally Arab audience in Saudi Arabia, being clear on peace, being clear on terror, expressing an understanding to the Israeli problems, it doesn't mean that he agrees everything with us. Risking his life. And it's not a simple proposition for anybody. I do not know anyone else on the other side that will do it. And I think he is a great leader, and we shouldn't miss the opportunity to continue the peace process with clear cut.
Okay, thank you. Now I turn this over to you. So raise hands or make yourselves known, and I'll try and go from all across the room. Lady at the back with her hand up.
Mr. President, you come from a generation of leaders like Rabin, Ben-Gurion, Begin, leaders that were selflessly dedicated to the land of Israel. Today, some of our leadership has ended up in jail, not following the same lead as previous leaders. How come the leaders of our generation are not able to achieve similar results like you've been and other leaders from your time period?
Well, I'm not sure there is such a thing as a generation. Each of us has its own DNA. We are alike, but each of us is different as well. We are very much alike, but when it comes to fingerprint, for example, 7 billion people have each of them a different fingerprint. And that's true about us. I do not believe there is such a vocation. There is similarity necessary among leaders. Basically, I think leadership today has a different meaning from leadership yesterday. At that time, when we were living in the age of the land, and we have had to defend the land or conquer land, an army was built, an administration was built to do so. A leader is supposed really to lead, to be tough, to be macho. Since we entered a new age, the age of science, I don't think that macho has much to do with leadership. It's a totally different story. Because if you ask a leader, what do you have to say? Because he says, I'm great, I'm strong. People ask him, are you? Can you bring an end to terror? No. Can you bring an end to the social gap? No. So what makes you think you are great and powerful? And what can really a man do, even if he's a leader? Today, a leader is a person that serves, not a person that rules. That people feel he came to serve them and not to overrule them. And I felt it in my own experience when I was in the government, in different capacities. I asked myself on what did I spend much of my time. The answer is on frictions among ministers, ministries, parties. All the time there were frictions. The Prime Minister, I hardly heard the word yes, always criticized. Now I'm a president, so I don't have an administration, so I don't have frictions. But believe me, I can do as much and maybe more than when I was a Prime Minister. Because I found out, if you don't order people, but ask them, you wouldn't believe that the wildest person that doesn't respect the law, ask him to volunteer? Yes. So a leader should create volunteering. And I think the greatest force, as strong, and maybe even stronger than government, are global companies. Because they live on goodwill, not on impositions. Globality created individuality. Because the world is not only very much global, but very much individual as well. And if you will try to introduce racism, discrimination in globality, you're out. It's a global force without a global government. It's a global strength which is based on goodwill. So leadership today is a totally different story. And I recommend whoever wants to be a leader or so-called leader, serve your people. From my own experience, may I tell you that serving is better than ruling.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. This side of the room, somebody. Yes, gentleman with your hand up there. Introduce yourself, I think that would be nice as well from now on, please.
Ben Sales, JTA. In the 60 plus years you've served the country, what would you say is your biggest regret?
Your biggest regret. In 60 years serving the country, what has been your biggest regret?
I never regret. Why should I waste time on regretting? Anyway, there is opposition that will do the job, so why should I worry? They will regret on my behalf.
Ben, please. Just sit there. That's okay, I can repeat the question.
For many years, Israel was a source of great unity for the diaspora. Of recent years, it's become a source of controversy. And there's much discussion about which groups are pro-Israel, who's in the tent, and who's out of the tent. How would you define what's pro-Israel today, and who's in the tent, and who's not?
Today to be...
Mr. President, let me repeat the question so the rest of the crowd can hear it. So the question from Gary Rosenblatt is, you know, the notion of being pro-Israel. What does that mean, and who should be considered to be in the pro-Israel tent, and who is beyond the pro-Israel tent?
There were times that it could be just for Israel. Now we have to be Jewish and for Israel. So the link between almost half of the Jewish people who live in the United States and Israel should be meaningful to both sides. By being Jewish, I mean we have to respect values, not only politics. There are 3 values that we have to respect. To be brief, the 10 Commandments, the moral code. This is the shortest document in history, only 172 words. In 3,500 years, no word was changed or was necessary to change. And it became the foundation of the civilized world. Number 2, we have to learn. You cannot be Jewish without learning. Shall I say, you cannot be Jewish and satisfied. Satisfaction and Jewishness doesn't go together. Because if a person becomes satisfied, he stops to thinking, he stops to revolting, he stops to creating. We are a group of revolt and creation. We shouldn't give it up. And in order to do so, we have to learn and learn and learn. We arrived at the right age now. Because today, science is more important than politics. knowledge is the real coin of our life. And the third point is to seek peace. We were born as a nation that has the greatest prophet, that called in the most brilliant way for peace as the goal of our life, Isaiah. If all of us will agree to these 3 points, to serve as a common ground, in my judgment, it's strong enough, it's good enough. Then if there are different streams, it's natural. But let's not look at the streams, look at the river. And the river is based on the 3 foundations that I mentioned.
Please decide. Yes.
Hi, Mr. President. My name is Diego Melamed from Argentina, the country of Pope Francis. How do you think the Pope will help in the Middle East peace environment? And what are the next steps in his involvement in the Middle East peace process? The Pope Francis.
How will Pope Francis help in the Middle East peace environment? The Pope. Diego is from Buenos Aires.
Oh, yes.
What is
What is the Pope? Thank you. I think he's the best Pope the Jewish people ever had in 2,000 years. For 2 reasons. He brought back to religion its spiritual meaning, rather than the administration strength. He's a Pope of values, not a Pope of power. From our standpoint, when there are so many outbursts of anti-Semitism in Europe, he called in the Vatican, representative of the Jewish people, of the Muslim people, of the Christian people, to demonstrate brotherhood. As he called it, to call the Jewish people, you are my oldest brother. I must say, he's a person that creates trust and sincerity and courage. We really were answered all what we asked for. For example, we didn't want that this process will take place at the church, so we could do it in the garden. There weren't any symbol of religions, neither crosses or anything else. And it was really a demonstration what religious can serve positively. Because unfortunately, terrorists are hanging on religious too. The lord of the terrorist has a sword in his hand, and they say, call them to kill. For us, this is not a lord, this is a devil. And this really demonstrated the real meaning of what is believing in heaven. To seek peace, to have tolerance, to keep your tradition, to prefer your values. In my judgment, it was a great event. Also, Stalin said that the Vatican doesn't have divisions. Stalin did have divisions, so what?
Okay, we'll take another question from the back. Lady there with the hand up.
Hi, I am
Introduce yourself.
May Samra.
May Samra from Enlace Judío, Mexico. What is the importance of Latin America now for Israel? And the other question is, what would you advise Mr. Rivlin now that he is the next president?
The echo is not so good.
Oh, sorry. The question comes from Mexico. So, what is Latin America's relationship and importance now for Israel? And because she's a journalist, she asked 2 questions. And the second one is your advice for your successor, Mr. Rivlin.
I just visited Mexico, and I visited the new president. We cannot speak about Latin America because there are different countries. Venezuela is not like Mexico, for example. But basically I can say about Latin America that is going over now from political democracy to economic democracy, which is very important. Politics is for leaders, economy is for people. And they begin to take care of people. I think it's a healthy development. And I think also that they escaped the simple proposition that Uncle Joe is dangerous and it doesn't exist. They have their own trans-Atlantic connection, they build their own connection too. There is a phenomenon which is a little bit sad for us. The number of Jews in Latin America declined, the number of Arabs increased. But many of them are Christians and Lebanese. I was myself surprised when I visited Brazil. And I got an exceptional reception. There were two speeches, one on behalf of the Senate and one on behalf of the House of Representatives. I learned later that the Speaker of the Senate was an ex-president of Brazil, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives was from an Arab origin. I must say that his speech was second to the speech of the President when it comes to Israel. And then everybody embraced me and kissed me. I thought maybe I'm at the wrong place. But what I think, from our standpoint, is we have to develop good relations with the Arabs who live in those countries too. Because in many countries, the Jews and the Arabs in Latin America have good relations. Actually, I was invited to have lunch with the three persons that were the committee to prepare the Olympiada. Well, two of them were Jewish, one of them was Arab. I felt at home.
Mr. President, sorry, I just didn't want you to leave out the second question, which is your advice for your successor.
I don't think he needs my advice. He's a grown-up person, his own experience. And anyway, I don't think he has to be like me, he has to be like him. There is no characteristic how to be a president. President is very personal. And I think that my successor is blessed with all the necessary qualities to be president.
Okay, please. Just go back, there's a microphone behind you, if you just take a few steps back.
Carole Azoulay מצרפת, Actualité Juive. You can translate in English?
I'm sure the President understands, but you're saying for the rest of us? So you're from...
To hear, I don't have any problem.
So I'll translate and repeat. So you're Caroline and you're from France? Okay, good, yep.
שלום, Mr. President. מה לפי דעתך האחריות של המדיה, של ה-Jewish media, in צרפת במיוחד, לגבי האנטישמיות, לגבי כל זה, מה התפקיד של ה-Jewish media היום?
So let me translate.
What is the task of the Jewish media?
Yeah, okay, good. Especially in France, but everywhere. Good question for this audience, especially in a climate of anti-Semitism.
The task of the Jewish media is to criticize us when we are alone and to defend us when we are being attacked.
Okay, please. I'll repeat the question. You're going now for your final visit as president to see President Obama. The question is, what would you be giving him words of advice and wisdom, and will you be bringing up the case of Jonathan Pollard?
Well, I don't think that I'm the person that has to give advice to the President of the United States. I think I can have his advice more than I can offer him advice. It's let's keep a sense of proportion. As the French are saying, to proportion, garder. They have to keep it. I have the highest regard for President Obama. And I want to make it because there are many people who criticize him, so I want to make my position clear. Obama didn't change America. He changed America, elected Obama. Obama didn't create the situation which exists when he was actually elected. He found not a simple position. When Americans were fighting, the economy was in a poor position. There are two new important powers, India and China. He didn't create them. And the world is in turbulence. Look what's happening in the Middle East. He didn't create it. The Middle East was 100 years under the spell of two empires, the British and the French. They organized the Middle East in accordance to their comfort, ignoring ethnicity and tradition. The empires that won the Middle East lost their empires. And for that reason, all what they draw in the way of maps or build in the way of life is falling down. Now you have to, and also in the age of land, we have had organized armies, two at least, one winning, the other losing. Science cannot be conquered by armies. You don't need armies for science. So actually the classic wars are over in practice. It was replaced by terror. Terror has not 2 sides but 100 sides. They are split and they are splitting. They don't respect law, they don't have borders. They don't have any feeling for human people, humankind. They are killers, they are murderers. And they brought down many countries. You know, there were times that maybe countries hoped that they can achieve with terror things they couldn't achieve with wars. Today, you know, terror was a boomerang. They destroy country after country. Look at Syria, look at Iraq, look at Lebanon, look at Yemen, look at Libya, wherever you move. And it's very hard to fight them because they are spread all over the places. There are small, tiny groups. 10 or 15 people can come to New York and kill 3,500. And until you discover where they are, who they are, even like in our case now with the 3 boys that were kidnapped. So we have to think how to handle it. I don't think that terror can win, but it's very hard to win over terror.
Just that's, again, I want to honour Farron's second question, which was about whether you'll be raising the case of Jonathan Pollard with the President.
No, just I want to say, so it's a different story. Now I believe that we have to reorganize the world to face this danger, which is a menace to individuals and a menace to nations. Briefly, I think we have to have 3 major efforts or organizations. One exists, the national governments. But the national governments cannot have a say in global issues. It is globality that affects governments, more than governments affects globality. Secondly, as a result of it, we have the global companies, which took over the economy, and in a way is taking over terror because of their nature, spread all over the places. And as I said, globality cannot suffer discrimination. We cannot be global and racist. We cannot be global and nationalistic. But still, there are many dangerous people. Sadist, schizophrenic, primitive, and they can get the most elaborate weapons, the most dangerous weapons. So we have to find out how to manage it. My greatest hope to do so is by entering the human brain where decisions are being done. Human brain is a strange organism because it can on hand, it helps us to build artificial brains, artificial intelligence. On the other hand, it prevents us to understand how does our own brain function. We wake up in the morning and we found decisions that we don't know who initiated it. We are blind, we are strangers to ourselves. The minute we should understand how decisions are being made, we should stop being subjects to the brain, stop being beggars, we should become choosers. You know, maybe an old example in the primitive time is another instrument, a very simple one, the mirror. Before the mirror, people didn't comb their hair, didn't cut their nails. Once you have a mirror, everybody wakes up in the morning, arranges his hair and cut his nails without any government, without any dictators. So this would be the third effort. We are on the way to enter the brain, at least to enter to a point where we should be able to understand how it functions. Once it will be done, then there will be the three things together. The national governments, which will be in charge of the husbandry of the state. The global organizations will be in charge of discovery and science. And then the human brain will be in charge of the human behavior.
Okay, again, I'll move on very quickly, but just a word on Jonathan Pollard. Are you going to be raising the case with the president?
I made it, I think it was published today. I'm going to do whatever I can in my talks with the president to bring him back to freedom.
Okay. Back row there. Yeah, you looking around with your hand up, yes. Oh, well, okay.
Thank you. I'm Jan Schnitzer from Chile. I want to ask if you think the rules of the war is changed after the kidnapping of the 3 teenagers who weren't soldiers. So I don't know how this has changed the actual scenario.
This is a question from a journalist from Chile who's saying, was this kidnapping really a change in the rules of war? Because these were not soldiers, these were young civilian teenagers.
They don't respect human life. They don't respect the law. They are killers. They don't have the slightest hesitation to cut heads. And it's a terrible malady, it's a terrible danger. And we have to stop it by all means.
Okay, we'll take one last question, right in the middle there.
Can I just say in English?
Fine.
The Jewish community in France is facing many problems. Is it right for them to make Aliyah to Israel or not, right? As the Israeli, to make Aliyah to Israel is always, in my eyes, the best solution that I can tell you. What I can answer that nowadays Israel on her part has to try to be as attractive as she can. Because people are today not just escaping on poor places, they're looking for better places. And we should become a better place. I do believe if we should have peace, Israel can become one of the best places on earth. It's already a great place as far as science is concerned, as far as dynamism is concerned. I love to live here, I invite everybody. So I don't have any other advice.
Okay, I think that's a lovely point on which to end. I want to thank the President very, very much for answering so beautifully. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions, but next time I hope. Now I hand back over to Ms. Please. Thank you, everybody.